Welcome into the Weekend Feast edition of College Football Smothered and Covered, the best of the best. You'll get all of this here on the Weekend Feast. We, of course, are brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all things sports this summer. Major League Baseball, MMA, golf, they've got everything. And hey, once you're done, go play some blackjack on their online casino. Maybe some poker, maybe one of 150 slot options. Use promo code BLEAV, B-L-E-A-V. That's B-L-E-A-V. And they will match 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. Smothered and Covered store. It's in the description below. You can see it on YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify. There's a link right below where this graphic is if you're watching online. If you're listening, you should watch it on YouTube as well. But go to the College Football Smothered and Covered store. Gear up before the college football season. Joined now by a guy that I've known for, how long have I known you, Cole? 24, 25 years? It seems like seems like a long time. We had hair. Both of us had hair when we were at Auburn. Now neither of us do.
Yeah, that was a while back. I didn't have hair most of the time at Auburn, but a little bit. Yeah.
That's true. So you, of course, you cover the SEC primarily, but you also do all kinds of stuff with your show there in the morning on WJOX. But I guess first, let's stay in your neck of the woods with Alabama. What should the expectations be? Because I've said a lot that if anybody comes out and says they have a definitive opinion on Alabama one way or the other, then that person's a liar, because there's no blueprint to replace the greatest of all time.
No, there's definitely not. But I think one thing you can definitively say is that Kalen DeBoer is a great football coach.
Yes.
I think he put a really good staff together. The fact that he went and got a couple of other head coaches, active head coaches, to come be a part of his staff, I think is going to help him. He's got some guys with SEC experience there, and they kind of know the ins and outs of that facility and how it's going to operate. And then I think the other thing you can definitively say is that they do have talent. Now, are they the most talented roster in the league? No, I don't think so anymore. There may be two, maybe three teams that have more talented rosters top to bottom. Doesn't mean those teams are going to be better, but you got a really talented quarterback, some talented tailbacks. I think you're going to have a really good middle of your offensive line with the two guards and Brailsford coming in at center. I think you're going to have some guys on defense that can make plays, specifically one at safety, if not two.
Yes.
And then you're going to have a couple linebackers that can make plays. You have some different concerns than you've had in the past. You don't have a lot of the secondary that's going to be on the same page that have all played together. You don't have depth at linebacker like normally Alabama would have. And I'm not sure they're going to be as active up front defensively. Jaheim Otis might end up having a big year. He's been solid, but is he as scary as some of the other Alabama defensive linemen we've seen? No, not really. But it's not like they're super deficient at any position either. There's not going to be a spot where you look at it and say, man, they're just a D- there, and there's nothing they can do about it. So we don't know. You say that we don't know about him. I think it's interesting because we don't know a lot about the tackle position, and I include Caden Proctor there because he didn't go through spring practice. So it's hard for me to imagine him just automatically being better when he didn't get reps and he didn't go play and he wasn't working out a lot of the time because he's moving back and forth. Wide receiver, we've seen the little bits and pieces, but we don't know that this is going to be a real scary group. I think you got a strong tight end group, strong group of linebackers, some key players in the secondary with a little bit of a different defense that'll handle some coverage in different ways that could make them a really good football team. So I like the way some of the bigger games are spread out on their schedule.
Yes,
and I think it wouldn't surprise me if they go undefeated in the regular season. It wouldn't surprise me if they lost two in the regular season.
I think it's interesting because when you look at Washington last year, it was Penix over the top. And I think a lot of the focus was on Penix, but he also had three superstars outside. And you mentioned the wide receivers. Because, Jalen Milroe does a lot of what Michael Penix was successful with and what Kalen DeBoer has done. Jalen Milroe completed deep balls. That was what he was good at, as long as he didn't hold the ball for too long. Does Alabama have those? Anything close to those guys?
No, not close to what they had last year. I do think Jeremy Bernard can be a down the field threat, but not from maybe a speed perspective, more of a catch radius, use his big body, be able to go attack the football. I think this will be a little bit different. I think they believe they can run the football. And keep in mind, Dylan Johnson had a hell of a year for Washington last year, and that offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. So I think you can have a good offensive line. Like I said, need some help at tackle probably. You could have Jay Miller, Justice Haynes, both could be great tailbacks in different ways. So that gives you the option to play some two back and move some pieces around. I think you have 3 tight ends that can play. That gives you some formation options. And then you just hope that, Kendrick Law, Kobe Prentice, one of these guys steps up and is more of a go-to threat down the field. So the receiving core is very different. But also the thing that everybody got scared when, Scott Huff didn't come along or Ryan Grubb didn't come along. Kalen can run this offense. Kalen he can call the offense. He's called it before. It's his offense. And whether it's been Jake Haener or Michael Penix, it's been successful. And it's going to continue to be successful. And I think mainly because it doesn't have to be one thing. If they need to be run heavy, they're going to go out and they'll run the football 35, 40 times. If they need to throw it deep 16, 20 times a game, they'll do that. So it's not an offense that I think is very stubborn at its core. It's one that wants to set you up for different things. It'll take what you give them, and then it'll try to attack you where you don't want to try to play them the most. So I have a lot of confidence that if Jalen Milroe is consistent, and probably needs to be a little more consistent in this offense than he's been in the past, because I don't know if this offense is going to allow him to run around quite as much as he did last year. Also, keep in mind, Barrett, last year, that offense was kind of like, remember the old He-Man character Manny faces where you could twist his head and his face just kept turning? That was kind of Alabama's offense last year. They changed personalities 3, maybe 4 times. You said it before. They were a shot play offense for a little while. They tried to be a ground and pound offense and hand the ball off. And then they kind of turned into a quarterback run heavy offense. And then I think towards the end of the year, they took the best of all those worlds and tried to mix them together to be what they could be most successful with. So he's going to have to be a little bit more consistent in the intermediate stuff, I think, if this offense is really going to go.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at, that's what it's so interesting about this team is because on paper, Jalen can be Michael Penix, but it's so much more complicated. I think the one thing, though, that is going to remain the same with Alabama is that Nick Saban had this sort of, reputation of being stubborn. He was far from that. And I think having the ability for Kalen DeBoer to come in and say, hey, I'm going to put my fingerprint on this, but you guys are going to dictate what actually happens here is very important. And I think, we've seen this in the past with coaches. You have to be true to yourself. If you're fake, if you're Will Muschamp trying to be Nick Saban at Florida, things are gonna fall apart. But it does seem like Kalen is mixing the best of both worlds, which I think is very interesting and what Alabama needs. So let's go a little further southeast in your state, and that is Auburn. And look, Peyton Thorne, I think that Hugh got a little too married to him with some comments during the first transfer portal period. He's going to have to be more consistent because at times it looked like he was completely lost. Like he had the yips for a pitcher that can't find the strike zone at all, but he has had success. When you look at their offensive line being successful and the upgrade at wide receiver, upgraded offensive line and wide receiver, what is the ceiling for this offense? Because I've always said with Hugh, he was successful with Bo Wallace, Chad Kelly, Malik Willis. It's not like he needs high-end quarterback talent. He just needs a little bit more than competent quarterbacks.
Yeah, McElroy said that on our show in Birmingham a couple of times. You guys forget the level of quarterback that he's been very successful with. And it has not always been, Caleb Williams and, guys that have gone in the first round, even a Bo Nix per se. I think Peyton Thorne's got it in him. I've watched the Michigan State film. I've seen it. I've seen him be successful. I think a couple of things were happening last year. Number one, those receivers could not separate. They weren't open. And it honestly, not even always about being open. There weren't windows to try and complete footballs to them. I think that caused some of that hesitation from Peyton Thorne at times. Also, I think the offensive line was probably worse than I anticipated it would be last year. He didn't have a lot of time at different points during the season. I think this year you kick Dylan Wade down to guard. Jeremiah Wright looks like he's coming along. I think Connor Lew is going to be one of the best centers in Auburn history. He's got all the ability, all the talent to be that kind of a player. And you got a tight end that was the guy who really got you out all your jams last year. He was the only consistent player catching the football. Now you bring in not just a receiver or two, you bring multiple receivers in that are upgrades across the board with what you had that are different type guys. So you have a Cam Coleman that's your big body physical receiver guy, go attack the football, kind of an eraser, get your quarterback out of trouble, if you will. You go get a kid from Georgia State that's more of a catch and run threat that can take your high percentage throws, your screens, and turn those into 15, 20, 50-yard gains. You go get a receiver from Penn State that I feel like is kind of B plus A minus across the board. He's not the best route runner, but he's a good route runner. He's not the fastest guy in the field, but he's fast enough to get past you. He's got good hands, not just going to always beat you with his hands. Like, he's just solid. He's an upgrade over every receiver they had and everything that he does last year, and he might be their third best option. So, and then if you get another receiver or two of the youngsters coming in that helps, that's just an added bonus. And people forget Jarquez Hunter's still there, man. Like, Jarquez Hunter, you could make an argument he's the best running back in the SEC right now.
Yeah.
Gotta be. So if the offensive line does improve, and I think the middle, similar to what we talked about with Alabama, the middle is going to be good. Tackle's still a bit of a question mark. I'm not sold on Percy coming in and just locking down the left side and that being great. And then you got Too Tall on the right side, Xavier Miller, who has been pretty good at times, but consistency needs to come along. It could be better. And if the offensive line's a little bit better and the receiver room that has been completely revamped is a lot better, which I think it will be, Peyton Thorne doesn't have to be somebody who throws the ball 425 times and throws for 4,200 yards and 38 touchdowns. He doesn't have to be that guy, because he also showed at the end of the year he can break you down with his legs a little bit. So if all of those things kind of take a little bit of a step, I think Auburn's got some room for improvement. The ceiling, that's tough. Could they be, top third of the SEC? I don't know if they can make that big of a jump. A little bit past the top half of the SEC, I think that's possible. I think that's feasible. I think if you're looking at the quarterbacks in this league that have a chance to make the biggest jump, I don't know what kind of odds you could get or how you would wager on it, but Peyton Thorne would probably be a good bet there, because people view him right now as the, 12th, 13th, 15th best quarterback in the league.
Sure.
Could he finish in the top half? I think it's possible with his skill set and the guys around him and Hugh having more of his fingerprints on that offense. I think it's feasible he makes that kind of a jump.
Well, and I think it's interesting, too, because talking about the offensive linemen and wide receivers, you mentioned Jarquez Hunter in passing, but it's also their entire running back room. Almost all of their production returns. So if the offensive line's better, the wide receivers take a little bit of pressure off. Think about Hugh with all of those options, not with Hunter, but everybody. I mean, the upside is there. I just think for Auburn folks that you just need to see a little bit of it, right? You don't have to go out there and set records. Just show it's going in the right direction, and I think people will be fine. Now, going in the right direction for me for LSU's offense is fascinating, because Garrett Nussmeier is not Jaden Daniels. That's not exactly breaking news or deep analysis. He's just not. The wide receiving room is still pretty solid. You sort of do it by committee at running back, and they have the best offensive line in the SEC, maybe even the country. So all of those things combined, assuming that the defense is not going to be horrendous, what can LSU do this year?
I think LSU can make a push for the playoff this year, just because, number one, they have that kind of talent. I mean, you mentioned it. Regardless of what you think of Garrett Nussmeier as an SEC quarterback, he's got ability and a ton of ability. You've just got to dial him down mentally and emotionally a little bit. And if you can get him to act as more of a operator of the offense, a game manager, and I know people take that in a negative connotation, but that's not the way I mean it. That's the first thing
a quarterback is supposed to do.
And when you have an alien like Kyron Lacey and CJ Daniels is coming in, and you got Mason Taylor at tight end, and like you said, maybe two of the best 5 or 6 tackles in the country. I think the best offensive line in the country going into the season. Doesn't really matter what you have at running back at that point. And they've got a couple good ones. You just kind of manage this thing. Let your playmakers go make plays. Don't turn the football over. That's the scary part to me, is if you go back and just look at how he's played, his numbers, he has a tendency to give the ball back. His deep balls hang in the air for a really long time. And in this league, in any league, really, that could be problematic. And he's got guys that can go take the football away from him, but you're going to give the football away a couple of times if you keep doing that. So I like the potential of the offense. I worry about the defense, and I think Blake Baker's great. But hell, 3 of your 4 best players on defense were on that defensive line last year, and they're gone. And it was gross last year. Now you have 2, maybe 3 scholarship defensive tackles on this team. If they have a interior defensive lineman injury issue early, it's going to be a long year for that LSU defense. So the offensive line better be good, and the run game better be great, because they're going to have to keep the football, and they're going to have to keep that defense off the field. So I'm with you on the potential. I think they could make a push at the playoff, but also, and they're like a couple of teams in this league, they're an injury or 2 away from, I think, probably eliminating themselves from playoff discussion.
I think a lot of folks have talked about Billy Napier and the hot seat and all this other stuff. And it seems like a lot of people are trying to put a number on it. wins and losses because the schedule is so tough. And I'm never one of those people where it's like, look, a 7-5 can look a zillion different ways, right? And as I think for Florida, 7-5 is going to be pretty darn impressive, but it depends on the 5 that you lose to. But in terms of what you want to see on the field, throw wins and losses out. What does Florida need to do to give Florida fans and administrators faith that Billy is the guy?
Be more responsible defensively, not give yards away, not allow opponents to steal yards from you by being misaligned or blowing assignments, and come up with more explosive plays offensively. I think Florida was able to grind you away last year. Like they were able to play ground and pound. That's something that they can do well with intermediate throws, bootlegs, running the football. They can find those yards. It's just in today's college football, you can't win a lot of games that way unless you're just dominant at doing that. And they weren't dominant, but they were really good. And then defensively, you're just giving up plays down the field. You can't let that happen. You can't allow a quarterback to leave the pocket and go for 20, 30, 40 yards multiple times in a game and happen over and over and over again. So I think if you see more responsibility on defense, a defense that plays more sound, that at least the yards that they're giving up are earned. And on offense, you find a way to create some more explosives and you're more competitive that way. I wouldn't really care about the record as much. I'm on record saying that I think they exceed expectations. I think there's a lot of logo mania when people look at that schedule and they just automatically think, oh, that's that team, they're going to be good, or that's that team, they're going to lose. Miami didn't win 8 games last year. Central Florida didn't win 8 games last year. And there are people that are just chalking those up as losses. And I know Miami's got a ton of talent coming back, and Cam Ward may make them very different. But I hadn't seen him in that uniform. I've seen him play a lot of street ball. I mean, a lot of times he's an and one quarterback, just running around trying to make a play. And so is that going to work in that offense? I don't know. I mean, one thing Tyler Van Dyke would do is get rid of the football. So I don't know exactly how that game's going to go, but there's some uncertainties with Miami also. And there's just like everything we just said about LSU. I mean, there are a ton of question marks. You lose 2 first-round receivers, a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. It's like, is it just going to be as good? I don't know. Defensively, is it going to be that much better? I don't know. So, and Florida was in that game last year. So there are just a lot of games on that schedule that I think people look at and say, loss. And I kind of don't really view it that way. I think the defense will be more responsible. I think the D-line has a chance to be pretty salty. I think the offensive line is going to be better. I love Montrell Johnson. This Trevor Ball kid at running back is going to be an animal. 235 pounds, and he can move. He's got quick feet. He's got lateral quickness. You just got to find another weapon or two on the perimeter that can help Graham Mertz find some explosives down the field. Because, like I said, you can't dink and dunk your way into 9, 10, 11 wins in this league anymore.
No, you can't. Last one, let's go to Rocky Top with, I think a lot of folks are looking at Nico Iamaleava and saying, okay, yeah, he's Joe Milton. Like, oh, he had a good bowl game, but let's just – and look, right. I think anybody that watched Joe Milton play football before his final season understood he can throw the ball out of the room, but he doesn't have a changeup. Nico is more talented than him, just raw talent. Tennessee has one of the best defenders in the country coming back in Pierce. From a front seven standpoint, they're pretty darn solid. What should be the ask of Nico for Tennessee fans if they want to flirt with the playoff?
You've got to be efficient making decisions in that offense, first and foremost. It's going to go through him. That offense is just built for it to go through the quarterback. So depending on how defenses are playing you, if that alley defender's coming down in the box, you've got to hit those quick throws on the perimeter. If teams are going to play you man on the outside, you've got to hit a pretty high percentage of those deep throws if that's what they're giving you as far as one-on-ones trying to take the run game away. I don't think he has to be 5,200 yards and 50 touchdowns for them to go to the playoff. I think he just needs to be more efficient. And whatever the defenses are giving him, he needs to take it and he's be efficient doing that. I think my concern about Tennessee is a little bit what we talked about earlier with 1 or 2 guys being gone. I think they are 2-3 key players away from subtracting a game or 2 in the loss column. I think Keenan Peely is critical. I just think they need him off the ball and they need a playmaker like that on defense. I think Mays is critical at center. I just don't think they have another guy like him that can come in. Physically, they might, and that's capable of doing those things, but mentally and emotionally just handling all of it, I don't think they have another guy like him. And also, too, I think at running back, I don't know if they're as deep at running back as they've been in the past. And they're pretty explosive with what Dylan Sampson can be. You talk about hitting home runs. I mean, he can hit the home runs and make you pay for playing them a certain way. And that's how you force that offense to be what you want it to be. And I think they want it to be one where they can hand it off 40 times. And they're inserting the tight end and they're running split zone and they're changing things up and the quarterback keeps it every now and then. They don't want to have to throw it down the field. But if you play on that way, they'll just keep handing it off. And we saw them do it up there at Missouri a couple of years ago. So I think those 3-4 players have to stay healthy. And if they do, this is the best defensive line I've seen at Tennessee in, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years.
Sure.
I mean, physically inside, the depth that they have is on par or past anybody in this league. There's not many teams that have 4 real interior defensive linemen that can be above average in this league, that you feel comfortable putting in, playing, and can go, and then add a legitimate edge rusher on the outside with that. There's not a lot of teams can say that. So whatever the secondary is, young, new, better than last year, same as last year, it might not matter that much because that front's going to be pretty damn good. And the offensive line has a chance to be great if Zalance Hurd comes along at the opposite tackle spot of John Campbell, who's one of the best tackles in the league, and if they stay healthy. Because like I said, I think Mays is that important to it. And I think Nico has the potential to be a great quarterback. Joe Milton was going to be a great thrower of the football. I don't think he was ever going to be a great quarterback, and it's not really a knock on him. It's just kind of physically, we all have our limits. It's who he is. But Nico's different. Now, Nico has those change-ups you've talked about. He understands ball velocity, speed, tempo of the football. He knows how to get the ball out on time. Like he's much more smooth than Joe Milton was ever going to be. And if he's just efficient with how to run it and has a full understanding of it, I think Tennessee can be really dangerous this year.
I agree. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see how the SEC shapes out this year. Tell the listeners and viewers what you got coming on for SEC Media Days.
I'll be there with McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 7 to 10 a.m., joxfm.com. Be on set a little bit with the SEC Network. And I will try to spit some content out from Cube Show, my podcast. You can catch that. Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube. Please subscribe. And I think that's it.
Maybe more. I'll see you on radio.
We'll throw some Sirius XM in there probably too. Do a little bit of that.
That's right. Hey, you know what? I gotta find my way onto that desk too. See you down there, Cole.
All right, Barrett. Thanks, man.
All right, it's time for a reckless rant because that's what EA Sports wants us to do. More rankings being released. I've said for basically 3 months that EA Sports is doing a fantastic job gaining publicity and taking advantage of the hype for this game. And they did it again on Wednesday. Check out the top 10 players in the new video game. Now, I don't know how many people really care about Will Johnson and Will Campbell, but Michigan cornerback Will Johnson, the highest rated player. Will Campbell, LSU left tackle, 96. Now, Ollie Gordon at number 3. I know he's been in the news for other reasons. I absolutely love it. If you're going to win at this game, you take Ollie Gordon, you run him 40 times, and you lead yourself to victory. Same things with James Pierce. Now, going down this list, I think what's apparent is that there are so many good defensive players in college football this year because in addition to those 4, you have Caleb Downs, you have Travis Hunter, you've gotten Malachi Starks, you've gotten Mason Graham. Defense doesn't win championships anymore, but just enough defense does win championships. So I think the overwhelming sort of theme here and takeaway here is that there are going to be a lot of teams that have just enough. And if they can get enough offensively, then they're going to be really, really tough to beat. Now, Michigan with their 2 guys in the top 5, I don't know. We still got to see what they do at quarterback. But you look at Caleb Downs in that group, when you combine him with offensively with Quinshon Judkins, they're going to have just enough offensively as long as they get good quarterback play. I don't know if Will Howard's it. In fact, I've said many times that I don't think Will Howard is it. If I'm wrong or they put Julian Sain or somebody else, Devin Brown back there, then they may be just fine. And speaking of quarterbacks, they released their top 100. There are 8 quarterbacks in the top 100 in EA Sports top rankings for the video game. Carson Beck at 93, and I think a lot of people would say, hey, you know what? 93, that's probably where Quinn Ewers should be, because I don't know, Quinn Ewers is just the second highest ranked quarterback in terms of Heisman Trophy odds. Nope. Even with Carson Beck at 93, Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders. Listen, if you want more proof that EA Sports is doing exactly what it should in terms of building hype for this game, that's it. In no planet, in no way whatsoever, is Shedeur Sanders equal to Carson Beck. None. Now, if you create a player and you add some attributes to him, sure, maybe he can be. In no way, shape, or form is Shedeur Sanders even comparable to Carson Beck. But yet, EA Sports capitalizing on that search engine optimization and getting everything it can out of the Colorado Buffaloes quarterback. Look, we talk about clickbait a lot, right? Like that's a common term for that people use when they just don't agree with what you have to say, but whatever. This is clickbait because there's not a person in the world thinks that Carson Beck and Shedeur Sanders are the same guy. But good for EA Sports. They're doing a great job. Just for the sake of breaking it down, the rest of the top 8, Dillon Gabriel at 92, Quinn Ewers at 92, Milroe at 90, Jalen Daniels at 90, Jackson Dart at 90, Caden Salter at 90. Now, if I'm going to have one more beef with this, and you know what? Since this is a reckless rant, I am going to have one more beef with this. Quinn Ewers and Dillon Gabriel should not be ranked equally. We've had Chris Plank on my show quite a bit, and I do shows with Chris Plank on SiriusXM. He is ingrained in that Oklahoma radio coverage. He's the lead softball voice. He's on the sidelines for football, and he has said to me multiple times that Dillon Gabriel at Oklahoma was better than average, but he's not somebody you trust at an elite level. At Oregon, can you trust him at an elite level? I still think the answer is no. Can you trust Quinn Ewers at an elite level? The answer is yes. He got Texas to a national semifinal, damn near beat Washington in that national semifinal. I think people forget that. And went to Tuscaloosa, beat Alabama by double digits. Double digits. And then I don't want to play woulda, coulda, shoulda. But in 2022 in Austin, if Quinn Ewers hadn't gotten hurt, I believe Texas would have beaten Alabama then, too. Look, Dillon Gabriel's a good player. He's all right. I get it. He's good. He should be on this list. He's not equal to Quinn Ewers. Not at all. But again, this is what EA Sports has been doing. They've been doing a very good job of it. They are capitalizing on hype. There are one or two things here and there that they know will go viral, and good for them. I think the one thing to keep in mind when all of this is said and done, all of these rankings, all of these player rankings, all of these stadium rankings, all of this stuff are subject to change. And they've mentioned that. But still, Shedeur Sanders equal with Carson Beck? You are out of your mind, EA Sports. Joined now by a good friend, a guy I've known for 20, 25 years, probably dating us a little too much because both of us are now old dudes. He is Chuck Oliver. Chuck Oliver's show syndicated across the Southeast. You can also listen to him 2 to 6 on 680 The Fan on Chuck and Chernoff. King, what's up, man?
I appreciate the invite, man. I don't know if the high def video is good for me. You know, I was on with Jake Roos and Jake Rowe the other day. You know those characters. And we did the StreamYard thing, which means I had to figure out Google Chrome. I don't know. It's 2024. So when you don't shave the high def, it's not a good thing. So we'll just roll with it. But tell your viewers they can just go the audio, right? That's an option.
Well, you got to subscribe to YouTube, but then you can go to audio. There's a new feature on StreamYard. It's called Touch Up Your Appearance. So looks like I have makeup, right?
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do like the anti-aging Tom Hanks thing, right? Okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, first let's start with media days because you and I will be there.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
both have spots on Radio Row, which is going to be different than me having to dress in a suit, which I absolutely hate. So 11 of 16 teams are bringing quarterbacks. It seems like it's an ebb and flow every single year. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 11. Sometimes you get quarterbacks like Matt Corral, who hadn't even won the job yet. But let's go back to this. Is it the year of the quarterback in the SEC?
Oh, I believe it is. Carson Beck, to me, he's the 1-1. He really is all set up for that. In fact, my only question is, will Mike Bobo call those plays? Not that Bobo may be against it, but if Mike Bobo decides he wants to stretch this thing out, unwind it a little bit, he knows he's got a 6'5" guy with that arm and those receivers. And by the way, look at our scholarship running backs. Maybe we do need to wing it this year.
Mm-hmm.
As great as I think Carson Beck can be in the first overall draft pick, there may be more statistically impactful. That's an NFL. That's a Sunday thing, Barrett. There may be more Saturday to Saturday statistically impactful guys throughout, like Nico, Jackson Dart. My gosh, when you talk about playing that, Prize Picks and DraftKings and all that stuff, this is going to be dial a number this year in the SEC. And it goes deep, doesn't it? Like Jalen Milroe. Could he be the 5th or 6th best quarterback in this league? Stupid. Yeah. Garrett Nussmeier, who a couple years ago, he's got Manziel sort of things. And then we saw Daniels rush for 1,200 yards. And we're like, okay, maybe not Manziel, but
maybe he's that guy.
Yeah. Nussmeier could be like the 10th best guy in the conference. I think you're 100% correct.
It's going to be fascinating to see, but one quarterback who I think has been overlooked, and a lot of it's due to injury, but it's a little unfair to him because of all the quarterbacks in the SEC, is Connor Wegman at Texas A&M. I think that the upside is there. You go ask any NFL scout, you look at Pro Football Focus, you look at all these sort of metrics, and Connor Wegman checks all those boxes. He just hadn't done it all that much. I'm fascinated to see what Elko does with him, but I'm more fascinated to see what he does in a system that isn't like hieroglyphics under Jimbo Fisher. Where do you put him? Let's do it this way. Where would you put him at the end of the season in that pecking order?
It's so funny that you asked me this because about 2 months ago, I did an exercise where I ranked all the quarterbacks in the SEC, but I said, here's an important thing. Most of us, when we want to rank guys, we start at 1 and all right, who do I like most? All right, who do I like second? I was like, name a quarterback in the SEC. Boom, Brock Vandagriff. I said, all right, now name another guy and put him either below or above. I was like, build your list that way, and it's a lot more organic. I literally this morning was going to do a topic. I was sketching it out about my revised quarterback ideas. And Connor Wegman is right on the divide because I realized every guy that I moved up, maybe a spot, maybe 2, it was based 100% on this guy's experienced. And after watching spring and after watching the offseason, I'm like, I am retreating back towards what does literally every veteran coach do? Who's the guy that's played some? And so I'm revising my rankings and I'm going back to who's played some. And so in those rankings, we have guys like Jackson Arnold who, Barrett, it's going to work, all right, for Jackson Arnold. They're going to be a bunch of passing yards, a bunch of touchdowns. Connor Wegman's played, okay, and he's been Jimbo Fisher's choice twice. So that's not nothing. I think Wegman right now going into the season, he's probably 9th on the list. Like Nussmeier, Nussmeier hasn't played. Wegman has, so just above that. At the end of the season, he could be a top 5 guy in the SEC. That's absolutely possible.
Let's stick with Texas A&M because Mike Elko's had success at Duke. It's hard to have success at Duke. He knows Texas A&M from his time there as an assistant, and those fans are starved. And I'm not just talking regular starved. I'm talking 10 days in the desert starved because of the fact that they can't break through, whether it's Sumlin and Manziel or Jimbo Fisher, which was stupid to begin with. And I said that and they hated me, but we're talking about the 30s since the last time they were nationally relevant to a point where they might win a national championship, and spare me the COVID year. Is Elko the guy that can get him there?
He's the guy that can make them as consistently steady to almost great on a season-to-season basis. their lives just got miserable. All right. I think everybody in College Station, they're looking over at Austin. It's like Texas A&M is Tom Hanks on that island, and somebody just dropped a roast beef sandwich on the beach. All right. That's what the Texas program is to all these Texas A&M people. They just had 12 years of advantage being in the SEC, and they did nothing with it. 12 seasons to make it permanent. I mean, literally, there have been a century of college football before, Barrett, and Texas, by every metric, anyone, individual players, coaches, size of the stadium, Heisman's, national titles, everything, Texas was better. I mean, do you agree? The day that Mizzou and A&M signed that sheet of paper, A&M became a better program.
Yes, healthier program for sure, especially at that time when the Big 12 was like decimated. That
Absolutely.
was when
they
the
did
Big
nothing
12
with it.
was failing.
They did nothing with it. And so Texas, you can look at them and say, what did you really do with the opportunity once A&M was out of your conference? Did you, because that was supposed to be a little boost to you. A&M had a huge advantage, and there were some superficial and some, shiny, sparkly things that happened for them. They never maximized that opportunity. And now Texas, as soon as July 1st, Texas flew past the Aggies.
They did. And I know Texas A&M fans will hate to hear that, but it's true.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, you missed the opportunity. The window was there. And I go back a long time ago to, I wasn't Chris Del Conte. I can't remember who the AD
Patterson?
at Texas was. No, at Texas. I can't remember.
Steve Patterson?
No, but he said he had A&M had a small sliver of West Texas. And A&M fans just got so pissed. Yeah, and it was just like, that's true. They have a small sliver of West Texas in terms of the excitement of the SEC, and now everybody in the state is. And it gets me to this. I've said for a long time that, not a long time, a year plus, that Texas is ready for the SEC. We can all sit here. They're not ready for SEC speed. Or they're a Big 12 team. They're all finesse, no, all sizzle, no steak. They went to Tuscaloosa and won by double digits in a game that they trailed in the fourth quarter. I think people forget they trailed in the fourth quarter and won at Bryant-Denny by double digits because of the line of scrimmage. Now, things have changed a little bit in terms of the personnel, but am I wrong in saying that Texas is more than capable of being not just competitive this year, but an SEC power?
I think SMU and Texas, to a different degree, they are way outside the norm exceptions. Whenever you trade up in conference, it's great for the 15th and 30th immediately. It takes a minute to get your roster ready for the, quote, bigger time. If you go back and look at the Big 12 last year, now Baylor, I don't know, they dropped the transmission about week 3. That was a disaster. So Baylor was just bad, okay? Go look at the bottom 5 teams in the Big 12 last year. It was Baylor and all 4 of the new teams. When you have to get your roster, and you know what it is, Barrett, like a 4-3 is a 4-3, okay? But big guys who can move, whether especially on the defensive line, also on the offensive line, big guys who can move. There's your difference. That's what makes you not ready for a conference trade-up. Oklahoma and Texas are trading up in conference. Absolutely. Texas got the bodies. They absolutely have SEC big guys who can move. They had like 650-pound of defensive tackle last year in Tuscaloosa, both of whom wound up getting drafted in the early rounds in the past April. So they're SEC ready, and they reloaded at SEC ready. Look in the box. Look at those 9 guys, 5 O-linemen, and then the 3 or 4 D-linemen. Look at those guys and the depth, size, speed. Can they cover a gap and a half? That's what makes you ready for whatever conference whether it's Conference USA, going up to the AAC, whatever it is, there it is, and Texas is ready.
Is Sark ready? Because I look at Sark and he kind of, I don't know if, I guess he's a cartoon character to some, not me, but some, because of his unceremonious dismissal, with all the, off the field stuff. And, we've seen the video of him yelling at the dude trying to stop him from running out the tunnel. And to me, it's not fair to him because he's a damn good football coach. Do you think that he can be, I'm not saying Nick Saban, can he be Kirby Smart?
if he stays long enough, because if you started ranking SEC coaches on one metric, who looks like a Sunday guy? Like Steve Sarkisian, he looks like a Sunday guy to me. And so he may be like, even, remember the DC at Missouri was like, I'll go coach corners for the Carolina Panthers. Like, I don't want to be in college anymore. You're going to be a position coach for a bad franchise.
Jeff Hafley left Boston, an ACC team,
as a head coach. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
A lot of coaches are going to do that, by the way.
And so, I absolutely think that Sark could look at now. By the way, like when you're head coach at Texas, that's pretty high cotton. So like you can hire the staff and you can mitigate as much of this stuff. Like it won't get to your desk until there's a really good chance that you're going to get the kid. Like I get all that. It's still NIL and recruiting and boosters. And you know who doesn't have boosters? Like the Philadelphia Eagles don't have boosters. Okay. They got an owner and that's it. And you've got an athletic director there anyway. So like we know all that background. I think Sark he actually proved to me, because as I've been a big fan of Sark's personally, I'm a big fan of second chances, especially when a guy takes advantage of it. And he had demons. I mean, we all know about it. It was the drinking stuff, and it cost him head coaching job at USC. I don't like any of that. My gosh, has he come all the way back and then 5 steps past it? When I say 5 steps past it, do you know where he was as recently as kickoff 2 years ago? Dude, you've been at 3 pretty good programs. You really hadn't won yet. Washington, people forget he was with Husky. Washington, USC, and now Texas, and you ain't won yet. Now, he was
Washington, they were just okay. They were good, but not great.
Same thing at Southern Cal. He'd only been a couple of years in Texas, but didn't they go 6-7 maybe? And
sounds about right.
Yeah, and then all of the recruiting happened, and like he brought Quinn Ewers down from Ohio State, and I'm looking at this, is like, did we not pay attention to their record? But he had something building there, and then took off in 22, and last year through the roof, and they could win the national championship this year. Absolutely, they could. It would be a surprise if they're not a playoff team for the second year in a row.
I agree. Opinion on Quinn Ewers, because I look at Quinn Ewers and I kind of go back and forth. Okay, I'm a Carson Beck guy, and then I'm a Quinn Ewers guy, and then I kind of go back and forth. To me, Quinn Ewers is, I think, the most important player in college football this year, because he's the guy that will have to lead Texas not only into the SEC, but into national championship contention and further set the tone. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. And you may talk about, like, I don't know. I think they'll shake the tree and 2 running backs will fall out of it. But they do have that concern as well. But
they do that.
Like, I've looked at, Quinn Ewers last year, the past couple of seasons. Dallas Turner falling on my quarterback is not the same as you figured out my guy. Okay. And my guy's kind of doesn't know how to fall and ruined his shoulder a little bit. That's not the same as you figured out my guy. There have been injuries and kind of weird ones the past 2 seasons. Other than that, Quinn Ewers, that kid's got a fastball, man. In fact, somebody asked me before last season, who's the number 1 kid in college football you're most excited to see? No other measuring stick. I was like, Quinn Ewers. I don't know why I said that, but I was like, wait a minute. Good-looking Texas quarterback with a howitzer on his shoulder and then all that track star on the outside, AD and Worthy and all those guys. I was like, yeah, Quinn Ewers. Different receiver, better quarterback, more confident coach, higher stakes. They're expected to do this year. Last year it was, hey, I wonder if they can. I'm all about the Longhorns. Not like picking them for the national championship, but where they have hit that program right now, the momentum, the way they play, love watching them.
Yeah, I've always kind of broken it down this way. In the playoff era, there are teams that can get there and there are teams that can win it, right? Michigan State, when they got there, they couldn't win it. There was no chance. And Clemson with Kelly Bryant, they could get there. They couldn't win it. And that was in the middle of the Clemson air quote dynasty. And I think Texas is a team that actually can win it. Not will, but can get there. A team that is far away from that is South Carolina. Lenore Sellers is going to be their quarterback. Shane Beamer, I guess the shine has worn off. I don't know if that's fair, because I think there are still some people who like him, especially within the walls of that football complex. And obviously he's built that program. I talked to Shane a lot. He's been on this show. And the fact that he's built that program in his image is very important, because if you have a guy faking it, like Will Muschamp at Florida, it's going to crash and burn very quickly. I like that with Shane Beamer. But what should be the expectation at South Carolina in an era of no divisions and Oklahoma and Texas in the conference?
They're never playing for the SEC title again.
I agree.
when Missouri or Carolina did that, it was because three monsters were down all at the same time. I mean, remember James Franklin at Vanderbilt? He beat Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida in the same season.
That's sorcery. I still say, I still am baffled by that whole thing.
And then he was like, peace, James out.
Deuces.
So my work is done here, ladies and gentlemen. So like we know what used to be baked into it. There was the express lane, wasn't there? Like finally, I picked the right lane. I'm in the East, and it's not Spurrier and Richt early days and Fulmer. It's Lane Kiffin or Derek Dooley. It's I got a shot now. I can beat Ron Zook, I think. And so
a lot of people can do that.
Yeah, it was a totally different environment there. All right, here's what I think about Shane. I think like 97% of the people in that building, I think the fans, I think everybody absolutely believes we have the right coach or a good coach or he's doing everything. Like I think 97% of the people have some sort of positive image of Shane where whatever happens is not really on him. And this is why I say that. I think South Carolina is doing literally everything they can right now. You mentioned Boom. I can't tell you how many times Muschamp, I'm a big fan of. It was always so very nice and accommodating and all that. But I knew it was coming out of his mouth. He said, we got 6.5 million people in South Carolina. You got 6.5 million people in Atlanta, Chuck. We have to recruit that area. I was like, yes, you do. You have kids in South Carolina. Comparatively. And so people know that unless there's this weird thing where like 3 straight years, wasn't it, was it Holloman or Gilmore? And then it was Lattimore and Clowney. And I'm like, That's not real. Okay. But it was real. And then suddenly did they win? Was it like 41 regular season games in 3 years?
That is correct. That is correct.
I'm like, all right, that's not nothing at South Carolina, but you got to have the kids. And so people know, especially in name, image, likeness, like they got Nick Harbor, a little misguided because there was so much, any other layers there, but they agreed to him with the track and all that. That was part of the agreement to get him. I think that Lenora Sellers, like, I don't feel I'm being sold anything. I'm not going to tell you it's going to work out. I'm saying everything I've heard from folks there in Columbia, when they talk about Lenora Sellers, it really sounds genuine. They have a confidence about that kid. Now, he has to go out and play SEC football, and Spence Rattler was a monster last year. So many folks, you look at the statistics and you get such a limited view.
He didn't have an offensive line. That's a big thing.
He had UNC insignias all over his body after that game, and it never really got better. He played his tail off last year, and so anything like it can undo it. I think now this is a portal era thing, but still their leading returning receiver, I think, had 12 catches. And so I think the giant ball of context here, I think South Carolina people, whoever that is, administrators, fans, players, I think everybody looks at Shane and about 97% of them go, yeah, we're doing all we can with him. And so it's external factors. They're punching up right now, and they could win 7 games, like a punch-up season. And I would look at him and go, dang, Shane, 7 wins.
I 100% agree. It's like the Arkansas of what used to be the SEC East. Well, Chuck, tell everybody how they can find your syndicated across the Southeast. You got sticks everywhere.
Yeah, it's southernsportstoday.com, I believe is the website. You can Google your computer, Chuck Oliver Show, and you can find it out there. We just talk college football for a couple hours a day. Honestly, it's just, you know what it is? Anybody listening right now, I'm you plus a microphone. That literally is whatever you're talking about with college football. We do that for a couple hours a day.
It's a great show. It's a great show. Chuck, appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to the Weekend Feast edition of College Football Smothered and Covered. Of course, we are brought to you by Bet Online. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, and they'll match $50 on your first deposit up to $250. Enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you on SEC Media Days Radio Row next week from Dallas.